The iPhone 16 Pro Max looks like a small upgrade on paper, but there are some substantial new features and dozens of tips that you'll need to know in order to get the full experience. So in this video, I'll be showing you more than 25 tips, tricks, and just things you need to know about the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. Okay, so this is the biggest iPhone Apple has ever made at 6.9 inches. So that means that reachability is going to be a must, so you don't have to do hand gymnastics to get to the top of your screen to invoke the control center or to pull down the notification center. Sometimes it's nearly impossible with one hand, and that's why you can do this simple gesture right here where you swipe down and it will invoke reachability. So you need to enable this, make sure this is enabled inside your settings. So go into accessibility and then go down to touch and make sure that reachability is enabled. And now when you swipe down from this bottom section of the screen onto the bottom bar, it will invoke reachability, which allows you to reach just right here to access the control center and of course to scroll and do whatever there as well. So it makes it easier for this big 6.9 inch display. And if you want to take this a step further, go into your settings, go to general, and then go down to keyboard. And from here, you want to enable the one-handed keyboard to be either right or left, depending on your orientation. So I'm right, so I'm going to select that. And now when I go to the keyboard, I can access the full keyboard with just one hand easily. And I can tap this to go back to the old original style. And there's even another way to access the control center or even the spotlight search without even touching the screen, which really comes in handy for the Pro Max specifically since it's way up here. So check this out. If I press the action button, it invokes the control center there. I press it again and the control center goes away. Or for example, if I'm inside of an application and I want to access spotlight search, before I'd have to go out and then swipe down to access it. But now if I'm in an application, I can just press on the action button and check that out. It invokes the spotlight search for me. And to do this, all you need to do is tap on the plus up in the top right and then just search for control center, select that, and I have mine set to toggle instead of just showing the control center. And then for spotlight search, all you have to do is search for search and you'll see it right here. And speaking of the action button, if this is your first year with an action button, you need to know how to take full advantage of this button because it's a lot more powerful than it seems at first, especially now with iOS 18. So go into your settings and go to action button, and we'll talk about shortcuts in a moment, but you also want to check out the controls because this will allow you to access a lot of your control center toggles by simply pressing on the action button. But shortcuts is where the real magic happens because if you tap down here, this is where you can access any of your, get started like simple shortcuts. But then right here, you could do something like showing a folder. So for example, I have a folder for action menu. So now if I press on my action button, check this out. I have multiple different menu options to choose from with one simple press of the action button. And the way I did that is very simple. You just have to go back to your shortcuts right here and then just create a new folder and then add shortcuts into that folder. So I have the action menu right here. It's just a bunch of shortcuts inside of a folder. But you could also take advantage of third-party applications as well. If you keep scrolling down, for example, ChatGPT, I can launch a new voice conversation with the new advanced voice mode in ChatGPT by simply pressing on the action button. Okay, so now we need to fix the camera control button. So you already know the basics of the camera control button, but we might need to fix that. So if you're struggling with it, check this out. Let's go into our settings. Let's go down to accessibility, and then we want to look for camera control right here. And this is where you're going to have some options that you will want to tweak. So for example, the controls gesture, if you don't like how you accidentally press the camera control button when you're inside of the camera, you can actually disable these. That way, when you press camera control right here, we go into the camera application and all it does is takes the picture. All you can do is take the picture. That's it. There's no swiping gestures, no menus, anything like that. It's a simple shutter button. So if you prefer that, you can do that. And I think that's a lot better than just fully disabling the feature altogether. Now also down here, you need to change the light press force. So if you do have light press turned on, you might want to change this to lighter so it doesn't take as much force to invoke the light press gesture. And then also down here, we have double light press speed. So if you find the speed that it requires to be too fast, you can slow that down so you don't have to double tap as fast to pull up the menu. And then if we go back into our settings and go to camera and then go to camera control, you might also want to disable clean preview. So this is turned on by default. So what this is that when you go into this menu and you start messing with it, it will remove everything from the UI. The top and the bottom right here, you can see are just empty. It's just black. So you can, I guess, focus on what you're seeing here in the menu, but I don't like that. So now if you turn that off, you'll be able to access everything else that's down here in the regular camera UI. So all your different modes, you can see your latest photo, all of that when you turn that off. And here's a quick tip. You could also use your finger to navigate through this menu here. So if you can use your finger here to swipe through the menu options, you can tap and you can use the slider here as well with your finger. Now, if you have an iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max, you need to take advantage of the ProRAW format and the new JPEG-XL codec. So here are some tips for that. So go into your settings, go to camera, and first off, you want to make sure that under formats, this is enabled, ProRAW and resolution control. That is disabled by default, so make sure you go ahead and enable that so you can shoot in ProRAW, and then go into Pro Default right here, and you might want to change the ProRAW format to JPEG-XL lossy. And the reason for that is because the difference in quality between lossless and lossy is very minimal. Like, it's hard to tell a difference, but if you take a look at the file sizes down here, 46 megabytes for lossless and 20 megabytes for lossy. So a big difference in file savings there, especially if you take hundreds of photos, which you will over time. So I'd recommend having this set to ProRAW Max and then JPEG-XL lossy as the codec. Now keep in mind, this will save the photo as a DNG file, which works in most photo editing software. It just might not be as compatible on the web straight from the camera. So you can download shortcuts or convert it to a JPEG if you want, but it will be DNG by default. And keep in mind, you could always change this from the camera app as well. So if you see up here, we do have our RAW Max button. So if you tap and hold on that, that will allow you to change between RAW 12 megapixels, RAW Max, which is 48 megapixels, or HEIF Max. If you want to shoot 48 megapixels in HEIF format, you can do that as well. But I do think that JPEG-XL is going to be better. At least that's what I'm using. Now, here's a tip if you're a ProRAW shooter like I am. So before, with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, which I have here on my left, it was so much slower to shoot consecutive shots when shooting 48 megapixel RAW. But take a look at how much faster it is with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. So I'm just going to keep mashing the shutter button here, and you'll be able to see how many more photos the iPhone 16 Pro can take versus the 15 Pro. So if you're somebody who took a lot of RAW format photos, back to back like this, just know that you can do a much better job, a much more efficient job here on the 16 Pro Max compared to the 15 Pro and Pro Max. Now, the biggest downside of shooting in ProRAW is that you don't have access to the new photographic styles, which are actually useful now. So you do miss out on live photos as well. But if you go ahead and disable that, you will see that we have a new icon up here in the top right of the screen, and that is for the new photographic styles. So if you tap on that, that will give you this new menu here where you have undertones. And if you swipe over to go to the right, we have different mood filters. So in my opinion, the mood filters are basically worthless. They're kind of like, Instagram filters. I don't mess with those, but a good tip here is to go into undertones and tweak one of these to be your go-to for certain scenarios, like skin tones, for example. So a good one for skin tones is either gold or amber. I found amber is really good for skin tones, and you can adjust using this square down here. So if you move left to right, that adjusts the color, and if you move up and down, that adjusts the tone, and you'll see the numbers changing up top. So there are 5 undertone styles by default, and you can tweak each one of these and they will stick. Now you also have this intensity slider down here as well, which changes the palette number up top, and you also have a reset button there if you want to reset it to default. Now if you just want a quick and easy way to get a better look for your photos, I would recommend dropping the tone down near 50%. So the color, that can be tweaked based on the photo, but I think for most people, just dropping the tone down to near -50 is going to give you a nice look to your photos and make it look a little bit more professional, like a professional camera took it. And when you want to take a photo, you can just snap right here and it will take that photo, and it will save your tone and color right here as well. Now here's something important. If you shoot in JPEG, which is the most compatible, you cannot change the photographic style after shooting it. So go into your camera settings right here, and if you go down to formats, you want to make sure that you're on high efficiency, not most compatible, if you want to be able to change the photographic styles after the fact. And if we go back to our camera settings and go to photographic styles, this is where it will have you select a default photographic style. So if you go to get started, it will make you select 4 photos so you can see how the style looks for different types of lighting and different photos. So you can just swipe over and see what you like. So I'm going to do mine as amber, and you can change the intensity right there. We're just going to go ahead and tap on continue, and now is where you can change the tone and color. And this allows you to dial in a nice look. And again, the further down you go right here, if you just move your finger up and down, that gets you to drop the tone a little bit, which I think makes photos just look better, especially on iPhone. So there we go. We have our style selected, and that will stick now. And you can see it there as amber. Now also, you want to go into preserve settings right here and make sure that that photographic style is enabled, so it preserves your settings and saves them for the next time you go into the camera app. And that's great if you don't want to always use the default setting. So if you don't have that selected, it will always just default to amber instead of what you shot previously. So you want to make sure that your preserved settings are on for photographic style. And fun fact, if you send a photo that was edited with the photographic styles, you can see the new UI on older iPhones. So I'm on my iPhone 15 Pro Max right now, and you can see I have the slider here to adjust everything in the photo using the new square UI here for the intensity, the tone, and all of that. So I can change that on an older device, and you can even see the numbers up top as well. That's pretty cool. So after you take a photo, if you tap on the edit button down here next to the eye, you can see that styles is selected by default. And this is where you can change the different styles right here or customize it after the fact. So if you maybe want it to be a little bit different than what you shot it as, you can go ahead and change that right there and then tap on done. And now if you want to apply that new style to multiple other photos that you maybe took, with a different photographic style, you can go right here and go to copy edits and go ahead and copy the style and then tap on select and select the other photos that you want to apply that same filter to or that new color style to, and go ahead to the three dots right here and go to paste edits, and it will paste the edit from that photo onto all your other photos that you select. Now also on the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max, we can now shoot in 4K 120 FPS. So to access this, all you need to do is tap on the little icon up in the top where it says 30 and change that, keep tapping it until you see 120. And now you will be able to shoot in 4K 120 FPS, and you can slow it down to 30, 60, 24 FPS without the video quality looking choppy. So if you go into the video that you record and tap on the edit option down here, you'll see the speedometer up in the top right hand corner. If you tap on that, that will allow you to slow down the playback speed. Okay, so now let's talk about ProRes video, because ProRes video is easily one of my favorite features of the Pro series iPhones, and it gets even better with the iPhone 16 series. So we have some stuff to talk about here. So first off, you'll notice that we can now only shoot in log or HDR. So if you go into your settings and go to camera and then down to formats, all the way down here at the bottom, we have the ProRes toggle, which that should be turned on, and then go to ProRes encoding, and you only have to choose from log and HDR. It's HDR by default, but I would recommend changing that over to log just because it looks a lot more natural and you get a lot more information and data with a log recording versus HDR. Now another tip here is to shoot ProRes video either straight to an SSD, so you can do that when you plug it in, and you'll see now that I have an SSD plugged in, if I tap on ProRes right here, it shows my max time is 180 minutes, whereas without it, it will show that my max time is 5 minutes. So massive difference there. But not only that, you want to also be sure to offload your videos to an SSD. Do not try to send your ProRes videos to your computer via AirDrop or any other way. The best way to do it is to just plug an SSD straight into your iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max and transfer it. All you need to do is go into the share sheet on your video and go to save to files, and then just make sure you're on your external drive. Now here's another tip if you're shooting in log: download an application like Kino to add some color to the video if you don't have an editing suite or if you just need to color grade quickly. So you can see here, I have a ProRes video that was shot in log, and it's going to look very dull because it's in log. However, we have some filters down here that will automatically add color to it on the fly, and when you apply it, it will just export it straight to your camera roll. So this can be great if you're on the go and you may not have access to like a Final Cut Pro, for example. So if I select the Stallman 3 right here, if I go ahead to apply, it will export it very quickly, and now you'll have color for your log footage. So if you go to it, you can see that the file size is much smaller. So it's still 4K, but it's only 96 megabytes, for example, for this video. So much smaller file size, which can also be nice. Now switching gears from the camera, let's talk about the always on display, because this is a great feature that's on at the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. So if you go into your settings and go to display and brightness, and then go down here to always on display and turn that on, you'll notice that when you go ahead and lock your device, you have a nice always on display here where you can always see the time. However, if you want to avoid it tapping on your screen to see your battery percentage, you can do what I've done here and add a widget so that along with the time, you could also always keep an eye on your battery life. So to do this, just tap and hold on your lock screen, go to customize and go to your lock screen, and then go right here and you want to add a battery widget. So mine pops up right here. If not, you can go ahead and scroll down until you get to batteries and select the big one. And if it shows your Apple Watch, you want to change this to the iPhone. So just tap on it right there and deselect automatic, and then just choose your device from the list. So mine is the 16 Pro Max main. There we go. And now it will show the battery life of my iPhone even when my device is in the always on mode. That way I don't need to tap on the screen and, to be able to see my battery life up there in the top right. Now the iPhone 16 Pro does have faster 5G speeds compared to previous iPhones. So the reports say it's up to 26% faster in 5G download speeds thanks to the new Qualcomm modem. But the tip here is that just because the 5G is better does not mean that you should have 5G always on. So go to your settings and then go into cellular, go into your phone number right here. And right here under voice and data, you want to make sure this is turned on to 5G auto. So a lot of people are compelled to just turn 5G on all the time because of the faster speeds. But the thing is, you might not always have 5G access in every location, and that will drain battery constantly searching for a 5G connection. So I would make sure to have this set to 5G auto. That way it only connects to 5G when it's actually available and it's not constantly searching for that 5G signal. And I also have 5G standalone turned off. That is personal preference, but that uses 5G for all cell activity. So that could also potentially drain a battery life. For me, it has. It may not be the same for you. I just prefer to have that turned off and this set to 5G auto. Now going back to the camera, but not to talk about the camera itself, we need to talk about the new microphones inside of the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max, because now, exclusive to the 16 Pros, we have a new 4-mic array, which allows us to get access to a new studio audio mix. So if you go to a video that you recorded and tap on the edit button right here, you have to make sure it's a video with some sound in it. You will see that we have the audio mix feature down here in the bottom. So you have different options for this, but the exclusive one to the iPhone 16 Pros is going to be studio, and you can adjust the intensity of this as well. So what this will do is basically make it sound more like you're in a studio if you're in an environment that makes your voice sound very echoey and like you don't have good acoustics in the room. So try this out. Here's an example of how good it works. Okay, so we're testing out the studio audio mix feature and we're trying to see if this actually sounds like a studio or something better than where I'm at right now. So I'm in a big open area and my voice is going to be carrying a lot. It's not quite echoey, but I can still feel like I'm in a big open space and I want to feel like I'm in a studio, like a tight space with good acoustics. So hopefully this audio mix can do that for me. And by the way, since those microphones are so good now, you might also want to use your phone to take audio notes more often. And to do this, an easy way to do that is add the voice notes as your lock screen control here, your quick control. So that way, if you press and hold on that, it will automatically launch voice memos right here in the dynamic island, and you can record even when your phone is locked. So you can see it's still moving up there. It's still recording while my device is locked, and I can go ahead and press and hold right here to disable that and end that recording. Now here's a quick tip about the cameras. So this year with the iPhone 16s, we have an anti-reflective lens coating on the triple camera setup now. So this is going to help reduce glare when taking photos and videos. So here's a shot of the sun that I took with the iPhone 15 Pro Max and of the 16 Pro Max at the exact same time, and take a look at how much better the anti-glare is on the 16 Pro Max. So if you were afraid to shoot shots of the sun or shots at night with, a lot of glare in them, fear no more, because it's a lot better here with the 16 Pro and Pro Max. Now here's a tip for taking portrait photos in the photo section right here, so you don't have to be in portrait. You can now change the portrait lighting straight from the photo tab. You don't have to be in the portrait mode anymore to not only take portrait photos, but also to adjust the lighting. And by the way, that is a setting. So if you don't have that turned on, just go into your settings and go to camera, and then go down near the bottom under the Fusion camera and look for portraits in photo mode and make sure that's turned on. And while we're in here, you might also want to change the Fusion camera settings to change the default 1x lens. So you can choose between 1x 1x, 1.2, and 1.5 if you have these additional lenses selected. And what this is that when you tap on the 1x, you'll see that it changes between those different lenses. So 1x, 1.2, and then also 1.5. And if you don't like that, you can turn off the additional lenses, or if you want to set the default lens of 1x to be 1.5, you can change that right there. Now, the battery life on your iPhone 16 Pro Max is probably going to last a good while, but you should also know that when you do go to charge, you can now charge faster, both wired and wirelessly. So I'm charging via the new MagSafe puck here because we can now charge wirelessly via MagSafe at 25 watts. That's much faster than the 15 watt wireless charging from the 15 Pros. Now you could also charge faster wired as well. So it's around 39 watts. So it's a little bit faster than previous years, but not a huge difference. I really just noticed the biggest difference from wireless charging using the new MagSafe puck. Now, speaking of battery life, here's another tip that you might want to know about. So if you go into your settings and go to battery and then to charging, you might want to change the charge limit from 100% to somewhere around 90%. So 85 to 90% is what I find to be the sweet spot, but you can change this if you would like. Now, if you're wondering, why would I only want to charge my phone up to 90% instead of 100%? And the reason being is because that's not good for a lithium-ion battery over a long period of time to constantly charge up to 100%. So if you're planning on keeping your phone for more than like a year and a half, then I would suggest changing this to maybe 85 to 90% as the charge limit. If you're planning on upgrading every single year, by all means, keep it at 100% because it won't impact you in that short amount of time. Now, here's a tip related to the brightness of your phone's display. So if you've ever tried to lower your iPhone's brightness late at night all the way down to like 0% and you still felt like it was too bright, well, the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max could address that because we now have a 1 nit minimum brightness. Now, here's another tip related to the flashlight. So if you activate the flashlight, you might want to adjust the beam and the spread of the flashlight. So you can now do that straight from the dynamic island here. So we have this nice animation and you can change the intensity of the flashlight beam by simply swiping up right here. And you can also change the spread by moving side to side. And you can actually see a difference when using this as well. So whatever you set it to, that will be the default the next time you go in and access your flashlight. Now, here's a tip for USB-C. So if you're coming from a device that didn't have USB-C before, you should know that the USB-C port on the iPhone is not just for charging up your phone. You could also use this to charge other devices and other accessories. So take a look at this. Since we have a USB-C to USB-C connection going here, it knows that my 15 Pro Max has more battery life, so it's charging up my iPhone 16 Pro Max right now. So that works with USB-C to USB-C, but if you charge USB-C to Lightning, it will always use USB-C as the power source and it will charge up the Lightning phone. But as we showed earlier, you could also plug in SSDs, you can plug in those mini fans, you can plug in pretty much anything that has a USB-C cord, webcams, you can plug in anything like that and be able to access it, most of the things, with the iPhone 16 and 16 Pros, which is really cool. And then the final tip here is that you can now restore your iPhone 16 from another iPhone or iPad. There's no need for a computer anymore. So this uses the same recovery OS that lets you restore an Apple Watch or an Apple TV via an iPhone. So now all you have to do is sit your bricked iPhone 16 next to another iPhone or iPad and the firmware recovery system will begin. So it's going to download a new iOS firmware and transfer it to the bricked device. So that's pretty cool. And you can see this was reported by 9to5Mac. So those are 25 tips and tricks for the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max exclusively. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned at least one new thing. If you did, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I do these tips videos all the time, and I will have my review coming very soon on the iPhone 16 Pro Max as well. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.